Okay, I feel like wearing earrings for this. The rest of me is completely not put together, but I'll put on earrings. It'll make a difference, right? Yeah. So this is called on Entitlement and Persistence and Crayons. So there was this really interesting quote going around on Tumblr a couple of weeks ago that I found particularly interesting as a feminist. So I'll read part of that quote to you really fast because it sort of sets the stage for what I'm about to talk about today. So this is from Foz Meadows on WordPress, and her full article on this can be found at her website, which I will put in my summary below. So here we go. Indeed, the idea of winning the girl, of overcoming objections or resistance through repeated and escalating efforts, is central to most of our modern romantic narratives. Female persistence, by contrast, is viewed as pathetic. And the more I think about instances of creepiness, harassment, and stalking that culminate in either the threat or actuality of sexual assault, the more I'm convinced that a massive part of the problem is this socially sanctioned idea that men are fundamentally entitled to persist. So this is an idea that I think has been pretty prevalent in our society for several centuries. If you look at the modern adaptation, the 2005 adaptation of Pride and Prejudice, for example, you can definitely see this when Lizzie Bennet says to Mr. Collins that, you know, she wouldn't tease with his emotions and she's not expecting him to try harder. There's this idea in our society, first of all, as she says, that men are fundamentally entitled to persist, that the idea of a woman saying no isn't good enough. So there's that idea. I think the sort of secondary idea to this is that there's this conception that women want men to try harder, that, you know, we're a tease. Women as a whole are a tease. And while I'm sure there are some women who do use that technique to encourage men to try harder, as it were, most women are much more genuine than that. And if they say no, they genuinely mean no, not try harder, asshole. And I think this is a conception that more dominates the way men think, but I've certainly heard women say, oh, she just wants you to try harder. And I'm like, no, she doesn't. She probably really just wants you to go away or accept her rejection. And yeah, rejection's hard. Of course it's hard. Nobody likes being rejected. But you aren't entitled to anything, either as a man or a woman. But especially, you know, I think this is more an issue for men. You aren't entitled to a woman simply because she's available. And it isn't, if she says no, it isn't just a try harder. It's a, no, I'm not interested and I apologize, but I'm just not. And really, actually, women shouldn't have to apologize because I'll sure shoot and tell you men don't apologize. You know, it's a polite thing to do to say, no, you know, I'm sorry, I don't mean to hurt your feelings, but I'm not interested. That's polite on the one hand, but on the other hand, that's more of a thing that women are expected to do because women aren't expected to voice their opinions. So that's sort of the setup for what I want to talk about today, and, you know, I love talking about feminist issues. So there's been this commercial. I'm watching a lot of the Home and Garden channel while I'm home these days. I'm moving to an apartment in Arizona soon, so I think that's part of it, and part of it is that I'm just like, daytime TV for days! But there's been this commercial on the Home and Garden channel for Crayola chalk, like sidewalk chalk. And I played with sidewalk chalk a ton as a kid. I would have been over the moon to have fancy sidewalk chalk. I just had, you know, like Target brand or something. But in this advertisement, there's this, I don't know, 10-year-old boy maybe who's playing with sidewalk chalk. And you see him playing with sidewalk chalk, and the sidewalk chalk is kind of dull, and he looks up into his neighbor's window, and it's this probably 10-year-old girl. And she sort of looks away and is, like, not interested because the chalk is not super interesting. So then his mom sees this happening, and she buys him Crayola sidewalk chalk, which is so much more exciting. And all of a sudden, the young girl is so into it. And on the surface, this is truly just a commercial about sidewalk chalk. And Crayola is just saying, oh, we make better sidewalk chalk, there are more colors, it's more vibrant, and therefore it's more fun. And, you know, to some extent, I imagine that that might be true, you know, or at least I suspect that when Crayola designed this commercial, that was all they had in mind. However, the very interesting subversive ideas that are presented in this commercial really follow in line with this quote. And it's pretty alarming, actually, because you have to watch this commercial as a person who's enculturated into this society and this way of thinking. I've watched this commercial probably 10 times before I started being like, wow, this commercial actually has some really subversive anti-feminist ideals that they're portraying. And it really falls right into this try harder asshole stereotype that men have about women. So what it suggests, first of all, is that this little boy isn't trying hard enough to attract the attention of his female neighbor. And so what freaks me out, first of all, is that his mom helps him to attract her attention. That the adult figure in this commercial is actually condoning this this male persistence. And it's a woman, it's his mom. So a female adult character in this commercial is condoning this male persistence that we sort of enculturate men to believe they're entitled to. So that freaks me out, first of all. And second of all, it's this idea that his persistence or his trying harder or his access to better resources, for lack of a better word, wins her attention. And because all of a sudden she's playing with him and drawing on the sidewalk with him, and there's a whole bunch of other kids, many of whom are girls. So his trying harder has attracted him all this attention. And really, you know, our society as a whole probably wouldn't see this commercial as a problem, because even me, with my pretty critical gaze, the first couple of times I saw it, I was like, okay, whatever, it's a sidewalk chalk commercial. And it's really only upon a little bit closer inspection that all of a sudden you're like, wow, shit, this is not just a sidewalk chalk commercial. This is enculturating boys to think that they're entitled to persist and entitled to that female attention. So really, it's, I guess it's just amazing to me how much this idea permeates our society and how much it's not just a behavior that we see in, you know, 20-something men or high school-age boys. It's something that's being taught to them at a very, very young age, that by trying harder, they are entitled to the attention of a young woman. And so it's not that this is really any surprise that our commercials are helping to teach this behavior and create this culture, but it's a pretty interesting way to see not only that this quote really does have bearing on our society, but the extent to which it's creating this culture of entitlement and persistence. So I guess the only other thing I have really to add to this after doing some editing is young men and gentlemen everywhere. It's not about persisting with us. The vast majority of women will feel much less threatened and will feel much less harassed if you just accept with grace and dignity the fact that we might not be interested in you. And as for you ladies, remember that it's okay to say no, and you don't need to be apologetic. And if you are one of those people who sort of expects more from men and demands that they try harder, you know, it's always okay to say, hey, you know, step up your game a little bit, especially if you're already in some sort of partnership or relationship with somebody. It's okay to, you know, ask with your words for a little bit more, you know, if something's lacking, but you have to communicate. So everybody can be better in this way. And yep, so have a lovely day. Think some feminist thoughts. And yes, this was on entitlement and persistence and crayons.